and welcome to this session on IGCSE Computer Science, Topic 5, Cybersecurity. This is the practical lab where we are going to be exploring many theory topics in a practical context, from brute force, DDoS, as well as malware, and many other skills. Now, before we begin this video, if you are one of my students or a student which is studying at the school where I teach, if you want to know more about these topics or have some very specific technical questions, all of the help you'll be able to find underneath the Google Slides or on the Google Slides. If you are a student, educator, teacher, or anybody wanting to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity and don't have access to the full resources, which I'm going to be presenting here, please do let me know. Now, as part of this video, I'm going to be doing the lab setup where we are going to be looking at how we can configure Windows 10, 7 machines, as well as Metasploitable, to be able to explore these theory topics in a practical level. If you want to kind of re-implement these skills outside of the classroom, if you're not studying with me, of course, do drop me a message. Now, to begin with today, let's see how laggy this Raspberry Pi is. So everything is set up on Raspberry Pis at the moment, and they are running Kali Linux. You are going to be looking at how to demonstrate an understanding of keywords and technical terms using cybersecurity. So very heavy on cybersecurity, this topic 5. We are going to be really looking at how we can learn more about these topics in a practical sense. You need to also be able to understand how to grasp the dangers around cybersecurity. So kind of in the disclaimer at the beginning of this video, I said that we are going to be exploring many skills in cybersecurity. If they're used in a nice, safe, educational context, in a nice, safe lab which you have set up, you know, there is no harm. But if you're using these skills with a malicious intent, this would, of course, be illegal. And lastly, you need to be able to grasp the technical skills demonstrated in this lesson or in the series of videos. Now, I'm going to be pausing the video at different points and coming back to it, so the audio kind of may change and drop in and drop out. This is being recorded on a Raspberry Pi 4 using OBS. Hopefully you'll be able to understand the skills which we're going to be developing in this video, and let's move on to the next slide. Now, these are the different practical tasks which you are going to be developing in the lesson. So the first one is using Hydra to conduct a dictionary attack on a specified device. So as you kind of work through this practical lesson, you're going to learn a little bit about brute force, what a dictionary attack is, how to perform a dictionary attack, and why it's really important to have strong usernames and also passwords, why you should be changing these frequently, and how so many people are targeted using default credentials across the web. The next thing, you are going to look at how to conduct reconnaissance. So how is it that attackers or hackers or cybersecurity professionals conduct reconnaissance or research on their targets? So we are going to be having a look at Shodan.io here today, and we're going to be starting with that in a few minutes' time. And we're going to be having a look at nmap, as well as tools such as Thing and also Angry IP Scanner, to be able to gather IP addresses on devices. And we're going to be using OpenAI here to create some dummy word lists for usernames and passwords today. Now, also, we're going to be looking at how to intercept a user's route password by conducting Wardriving using a captive portal to discover a user's network or kind of route password. So this will be a very interesting concept for you. We are going to be having a look at how to check if the lab computers, so Windows 10, Windows 7, Metasploitable, have they been configured correctly? And what you need to check for if you are, trying to exploit this device in an educational context. If it's not working, what are the different network elements that you should be checking, and also hardware elements to make sure that, the attack which you're trying to perform is successful. We are going to be having a look at how to generate payloads with the attempt to get a reverse connection to somebody else's device. So how do we deploy a piece of malicious code, and how can we get a reverse connection or a remote connection to their device using this specified payload? We're also going to be having a look at a very, very helpful tool, right? So commonly I need to transfer files between devices, and lots of people kind of log in on their email and download the file, but we're going to be having a look at how to use Python and setting up a simple HTTP server to actually transfer devices remotely using an IP address. So you're going to be using that when you transfer the payload, but also in your own personal lives, if you are needing to transfer different files between machines, inside a network, at home or at school, in the workplace, this is a very helpful technique. Now, this is going to be one of my favorites here. So we are going to be looking at how to use Meterpreter. So we are going to be deploying a malicious payload on, I think, a Windows 7 machine. We are going to see how we can open up their webcam, how we can steal the encrypted password, and how to actually crack that password using John the Ripper. Hopefully, if there's any grammatical errors in my slides, I'll be fixing them as I go through, but do kind of forgive me for now. And lastly, how to deploy a payload on a Windows 7 machine. And the fun one, which is how to deploy social engineering and phishing attacks. And again, that disclaimer here, right? I'm never going to show you how to configure some of these tools, but we will be having a look at how social engineering works, how people hide malicious links in an email, kind of confusing my words there, do forgive me, and how they kind of use tools like Bitly to disguise malicious links so they can get users to click on links which are infected so they can gather credentials or financial information from somebody. Now, last one for today. Once you have learned about all of the theory side of these skills which are in the computer science syllabus for IGCSE, and once we've looked at how to develop these different practical skills, you're going to have a task to solve. And I'll kind of break down that task a little bit later. We are not just asking you to learn these different skills without a purpose here. At the end of your lab, either as an individual or in your pair, or again, if you're outside of my classroom and learning this online, there's going to be a practical lab for you to solve to see if you're actually able to use these tools as an ethical hacker, as a penetration tester, to be able to get into somebody's device, to see if you can break an encrypted password, and to really see if you've been able to develop a basic understanding of cybersecurity skills that we are going to be having a look at. Now, an important one for you today. So subject notes, as always, whether you are in my class or somebody who's learning online, right? There are many technical elements to what we're going to be doing here, and there are many important theory elements to what we are going to be doing here. It's important for you to make some very, very good subject notes, so you're actually able to use these both in an exam scenario, but more importantly, because this is practical, so you can solve the challenge or the practical lab at the end of this video. Now, something which we are going to explore a little bit more in class, and I'm not going to spend too much time focusing on in this video, is what kind of impact did the COVID-19 pandemic have on organizations, but also people globally? And how did hackers actually, use this time when everybody's working online or studying online? How did they use this to exploit users? But as I said, we'll be exploring this on a more personal level in class. Now, first of all, hacking versus ethical hacking. So I'm a trained penetration tester, I'm a trained ethical hacker, right? I'm able to use the skills which a hacker would typically have for purposes of protecting an organization's infrastructure. So the difference between hacking versus ethical hacking is an ethical hacker will have explicit use by a company, by an individual, or by an organization to use these skills to test the security of a system. If you're using tools like Hydra, which is for trying to crack somebody's password without a user's consent or without an organization's consent, or if you're trying to break into a system, this would be termed as hacking, and this is, of course, illegal. Now, a few network devices that you need to be familiar with in class, and I'm not going to read through these with you. So we are going to be using network switches. We are going to be having a look at routers. We're also going to be having a look at layer 3 network switches as well as Ethernet hubs. So as we are doing a course on cybersecurity as part of the IGCSE Computer Science syllabus, you do have to have a good understanding of this hardware and how to obviously manipulate this hardware in order to be successful in what we are going to do. Now, these slides have got hyperlinks where you can click on the Here button, and I promise you that these links are definitely not malicious. You should be reading about these devices and trying to understand the basics of these devices before you complete any practical tasks in this cybersecurity lab. Now, on the last couple of slides, you should have kind of been through these things with your teacher already, but I'm going to briefly touch on these anyway. So we are covering port numbers here as well as protocols. So when we have got an IP address like 192.168.1.1 or 10.11.192.68, these are private or personal IP addresses which are going to be assigned by either a network switch, Ethernet hub, or a router, right? Now, behind these IP addresses, there are going to be protocols that we use. So one of them is going to be a specific port number for HTTP or HTTPS. So this is somebody that is using a browser on a device. So HTTP is going to be port 80 by default, and HTTPS is going to be port 443 by default.
So welcome back to this next section on reconnaissance. So reconnaissance means gathering research on devices. This could be devices which are within inside a network, so they would have private IP addresses which are issued by either the switch or router. And we also have research that we want to do on public IP addresses, and we're going to use tools such as Shodan and OSINT for this. Now, we're begin with those public IP addresses to get started with. We've got a tool which is in front of us now, which is called Shodan. I'm going to expand my screen at the top. Shodan pretty much indexes anything that has a public IP address on the internet. This is a tool that is used by intelligence specialists, so they're looking to identify, are there companies or offices or government IP addresses listed on here, and if they are listed on here, are those devices vulnerable? And this is a tool that is also used by hackers to gather information or do research on target devices here. Now, you can see what it says here about Shodan here. So it says search engine for everything on the internet. Shodan is the world's first search engine for internet connected devices. Now, if a device has got public IP addresses, it's likely that it is visible on Shodan. Now, there are other tools like OSINT that we can use, but we are going to be focusing on this tool today. Now, I have a paid account. You will be able to use a free account for this task here. What you can do is select on login, and then you'll be able to use your Google account to log in to Shodan. If you don't create an account, you'll not be able to use lots of search filters that we're going to be taking a look at on the left-hand side in a minute. Now, one of our target devices here is Windows 7. So I'm going to type in Windows 7, and you'll be able to see I've got some previous searches that I have conducted here. What we want to do is identify how many devices are being indexed by Shodan throughout the world. Now, Windows 7 is end of life, which means it's no longer supported by Microsoft, and this is generally known as a vulnerable device. If we scroll down here, we'll have search filters on the left-hand side. We'll also be able to look at the devices by port numbers. We'll get onto port numbers a little bit later in today's video and the videos which we're going to be doing throughout this series of cybersecurity courses for IGCSE Computer Science. Now, something else that we can see on the left is organizations that are running Windows 7. So we can see Courier Telecom is still using Windows 7. And we can also see the top products that are being used on Windows 7 devices here. I want to refine my search a little bit. I want to have a look for Windows 7 devices that are using remote desktop protocol, so that is port 3389. I'm going to select on this search filter, and you'll be able to see our search has been refined in this top search window up here. We're then going to scroll down and we're going to see, are we able to identify any devices that have got critical vulnerabilities? Now, we've got a device here which is based in Russia, and it's currently got a BlueKeep vulnerability which has been identified. Now, if we go into an incognito window, we can actually try to do a little bit of research on what BlueKeep is. So we're going to say BlueKeep vulnerability and we're going to see what information that we get. I'm going to change to English, and we'll be able to see that this is a vulnerability that can be found on devices that are running remote desktop protocol, which is 3389, and there's a possibility of remote code execution. That basically means we could get a reverse connection to this public IP address, which we're seeing right here. Now, I haven't had to do too much kind of research using Shodan here. All I've typed in is Windows 7, port 3389, and we can see on page 1 that there's a device here, which is based in Moscow, that we could potentially get a reverse connection for. Now, I'm going to continue scrolling down in my search results here. I'm going to go on to page number 2. I'm going to see if we are able to identify any other critical vulnerabilities on devices which are being indexed by Shodan. So it looks like nothing else on page 2. Let's go over to page 3 before we refine our search even more. And no other critical vulnerabilities on page 3, so let's refine that search a bit more. And we're going to have a look at Windows 7 Ultimate devices. So we're going to look at devices which are based in China. This could be changed to any country that you want. So we could change this to Thailand and do TH here, inside country. And again, we've been able to pick up 50 devices that are running Windows 7 Ultimate. Do remember that just because a device is listed on Shodan, it doesn't mean that it is vulnerable. We're going to scroll down in these results, and item number 2 will be able to see that this device running Windows 7 Ultimate has that blue keep vulnerability again, and again there's a possibility of remote code execution here, which means we could get a reverse connection. Now, what other information can we pick up using Shodan? So I'm thinking along the lines of nanny cams, webcams, and CCTV cameras. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to paste in a search which I've already put together, and we're going to focus on HIK Vision IP cameras. So these are common security cameras that are used a lot throughout the world, and I'm saying plus has screenshot true, and this is going to allow us to identify if there are any live feeds that we can pick up. I'm going to hit on search here, and it takes a while for search results to sometimes come back. And what we'll be able to see that we have got 413 results, and here we're able to pick up a camera with today's date, which is the 14th of April, which is based in the United States, Brooklyn Park. Scrolling down here, are we able to identify anything sensitive? We're going to definitely not click on this link here. And here it looks like we've been able to pick up a camera inside somebody's house here again with today's date. Now, lots of the time when people have got CCTV cameras set up, they have got no idea that the camera is broadcasting live to the internet and that this information is actually available. So this is quite scary. This could easily be somebody's camera inside their bedroom if they do have one set up here. Now, scrolling through these results, we've got a camera based in Beijing, and it looks like a woman working at her desk. And here, this is quite scary. This looks like somebody's home kitchen in Romania. Now, we're going to kind of move away from this in a minute. You will be able to do some searches. I commonly use this GitHub page to be able to look for vulnerable devices. I'm going to link this underneath the video so you can do some own reconnaissance and research of your own. Remember, we're not looking to do anything with these public IP addresses. This is only for educational purposes and for reconnaissance purposes, so you can identify if any of your devices are being picked up across the internet. Now, just before we move on, I'm going to go back to those HIK Vision cameras, and I'm going to refine this search again. I'm going to get rid of plus has screenshot equal to true. I'm going to do that search. I'm actually going to see if we can pick up any cameras which are based in Thailand. So to do this, I'm just going to do Command and then F and search for TH. And here we'll be able to see Shodan has indexed around 53,000 cameras, which are of a HIK Vision brand in Thailand. Again, we could change that search filter to be has screenshot and then true. And here we're able to pick up a camera based in Rayong. Again, they're using AIS fiber for their internet provider, as well as some other results which I'm scrolling through here. Okay, so now we've explored Shodan in a little bit of detail, and we've been able to find different devices that have got public IP addresses online. What I would probably say for you is, are you able to identify any of your devices that are at home? Do you have any CCTV cameras or smart devices that have a public IP address, and can you actually locate these on Shodan? Now, we're going to be moving on to local IP addresses next. We're going to be using Angry IP Scanner. So I've put the link for this tool underneath this video, so you'll be able to download this on either your Mac or on your Windows device. And we're also going to be having a look at Thing as well. So again, you'll be able to download this onto your device, and we'll be able to do some network reconnaissance or network research, and we'll be able to identify what information we can gather on devices that are connected to the same router. Now, to start with Angry IP Scanner, as soon as you have downloaded this tool, it should automatically identify your subnet that you're using from your router or your switch, and it should pick up your router IP address, which can be seen here. You'll be able to see my hostname is RP Mac Mini Local, and in order to start this, I'm just going to click on the Start button, and this should be able to identify all of the IP addresses that are connected to my router and which devices are live. Now, once the scan is finished, we'll be presented with some results which pop up and look something like this. It's found that there are 6 devices which are currently online, so 6 devices that are live, and 3 devices that have got open ports. Now, hopefully you would have been able to understand what we use port numbers for at this point, so why port numbers are important behind IP addresses and how they allow us to identify what different services are running. If I close this window here and scroll down in my results, so first of all, we've got the router IP. We can see that port 80, which is HTTP, is active on the router. And scrolling down in the results again here, we'll be able to identify a Philips SS local hard disk as well as a MyCloud hard disk as well. And we'll be able to see the open port numbers that they have and the different services that are running on these devices. Now, again, we're going to come on to port numbers in a bit more detail when we start with nmap in a few minutes' time. Now, another tool that you can use for network reconnaissance, so if you're looking at local IP addresses, is Thing. So you'll be able to download this either on mobile, Android or iOS, or you can download it for your Windows or your Mac device. Once you have got that downloaded, you'll need to log into an account or create an account using Google or any of the other services that it offers you. And then once you have this downloaded, it should automatically again identify your IP address. Here it's been able to find that I'm using a Mac Mini, so late 2018 Mac Mini. This is the IP address, and what we'll be able to actually do is again start a network scan to identify all of the devices which are listed within inside the network. Now, as soon as you're logged into your account and this has picked up your router IP address, it should automatically list the devices here. So these are all of the devices that are currently online in my home office at the moment. And it will also be able to identify network information as well, which again you can use for reconnaissance. Now, some interesting information down here, we've been able to identify my internet provider, so we can see that I'm using AIS fiber, the public IP address of the router as well. Now, if we go to incognito, let's see if we're able to actually do anything with this IP address. Over here inside Safari, I'm going to paste that IP address, and I'm going to press on enter. Let's see if we're actually able to access my router IP address by typing it into this window up here. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look like it's loading, so this isn't actually going to be accessible. But what we could do is see if we're able to actually also ping this as well. So if I type in ping and 49.228.107.115, we'll be able to see that we're not actually able to connect to my router through the internet, which is probably a good thing. Now, what we're going to be doing next is we are going to be moving on to network reconnaissance with nmap. So I'll see you in a few minutes' time.
Okay, so welcome back to this session. Now we have looked at how to conduct some reconnaissance with both local IP addresses using applications such as Fing, Angry IP Scanner, Net Discover, and also looking at public IPs using services such as Shodan. What we now want to do is actually do some research on our network assets and machines that we're going to be working with here. Now, we've already talked about port numbers, and we've been able to identify, why port numbers can be dangerous. And you'll be able to see in this slide here, we are able to identify different ports that are showing as open on an IP address. Now, what we're going to do in the beginning here is we're going to switch over to our terminal window. And then once we've done that, we are going to do some different nmap scans. Now, I'm going to switch over now, and for me to be able to zoom in, you just select on Control, Shift, and plus, and then it should be nice and visible for you. I'm going to ignore that message in the top right-hand corner here. So first of all, to identify local network assets, we're going to type in nmap and 10.106.10.1. And this is going to be the router IP address or the switch IP address, and then /24. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail on the /24, but by typing in the default IP or the router IP here and then /24, this is going to allow us to identify all network assets which are using this subnet. It will allow us to identify which of the devices are up, and it will also show the different ports that are open. So you can see the progress of a scan. You could just select on Enter, and it will tell you how far it is through. Currently, it's 75% through the scan. Just whilst this scan finishes off, we have got different network assets in this room, or different devices. We've got some Windows devices. We've got some devices that are running Linux, such as Metasploitable 2, and we've also got Raspberry Pis. Now, in these results, we're going to be able to identify all of the devices which are currently powered on. So if I scroll up in these results now, we'll be able to see there's quite a few. So here we've got this first IP address here. We're able to identify that SSH is enabled on this device, and also it is using port 80, so HTTP. And we can also identify the MAC address of the device here. Now, this one here is for our router. Moving down to this next one here, we will be able to identify some basic information, and looking at these results, I would say that this is a Windows device. We can see that it's suggested as Dell. These results are normally quite reliable, but we're going to do a more in-depth scan in a moment. We can see that port 139 and 445 are open, as well as port 135 as well. Going down here, we're going to be able to see another device on the network. This time it's identified as a HIK vision device. So this could be a camera. And again, these are the available ports which are open. Okay, 10.5, again, HIK vision. And this one, it hasn't actually been able to identify what operating system it is using. We can see that this is a port which is open at the moment. I don't know what this is, Cold Fusion. We need to do a more in-depth scan to find out. And an interesting result is on number 16 here. We can see that there are no available ports open, or that they are being blocked by the firewall. And on occasion, there will be firewall restrictions that are put in place by a network administrator to try to avoid people from identifying open ports or closed ports, or if there have been restricted ports set up on these devices here. Now here we're going to be able to identify that we have been able to pick up one of our Raspberry Pis in the room, and going down here, okay, we'll be able to see some other error messages as well. Now what we're going to do here is we are going to pick one of these devices, and I would say we probably want to pick a Dell device where we were able to identify some open ports. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit, and we're going to focus on this IP address here. Now, please bear in mind that when you're doing this, the IP addresses may differ a little bit. They'll follow that same format of 10.106.10, but there may be more or fewer devices when you conduct these scans. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a more in-depth scan, and we're going to use a basic nmap scan for this. We're not going to do the /24, and we're just going to focus on 10.2, and we should be able to see similar results that we saw for this device earlier, but we won't see all of the other assets which were included before. We're doing a basic nmap scan on this single Windows Dell device. Now, in order for us to find out a little bit more information, we can do something which is called a version scan. And this is going to allow us to identify the version of Windows that is potentially running here. In order for us to do this, we can select on tab. We can go across by using the left cursor arrow and type in S_V. And the aim of this scan is to identify what version of Windows is running. Press enter to see how far we are through the scan. This may take a moment or so to complete. And here you'll be able to see the results. About 20 seconds to complete the scan. Now, we've got a bit more information in comparison to last time. So still the same open ports, but over here underneath version, it's telling us that this is Microsoft Windows RPC, and also that it is currently running NetBIOS. Now, I guess for your job is, what is NetBIOS? So if this is a port number that is open, what type of service is running and what is NetBIOS? Over here inside service info, we are able to identify that not only is it a Dell device, but it is running Windows. Again, we want to find out a little bit more information, and we're going to do something which is called a script scan now. And this is going to allow us to identify, are there any vulnerabilities that nmap is able to identify on this IP address. So we're going to select on that up again. We're going to scroll across, and we're going to conduct a generic script scan. So are there any weaknesses in this IP address or on this device? And again, press on the enter key to see how far you are through. And this is going to take a couple of moments to complete. Okay, so now this scan has finished. We've conducted this script scan. It took a little bit longer in comparison to the version scan which we did. We've got similar information which is being provided here, but now we're actually able to gather a little bit more intelligence and identify if there are any weaknesses in this Windows system. So first of all, it said NetBIOS name is this. So we've been able to uncover a little bit of information about the device. This is actually a school-owned device. So this stands for St. Andrews International School, Bangkok. So we can identify the company that it belongs to. And we can also see down here that it says message signing enabled, but not required. No serious vulnerabilities, but again, this is reconnaissance work. We've been able to gather a little bit more information. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back over here and we're going to have a look at other types of scans which we can conduct. Hello and welcome back. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we are going to be focusing on a device which is called Metasploitable 2. This is a Linux distribution, and this is a device which is purposefully vulnerable so we can conduct assessments and also vulnerability assessment testing. Now, the IP address which we're going to be focusing on here is going to be 10.106.10 and then 43. Now, what you can do as students is you can do a scan of the entire subnet. So you do .1/24 to see if you can identify the device, or we can just get the device IP from the machine within the room that you're working in. Now, for the standard nmap scan, we're going to do this. We're going to do Control-Shift-T for new tab. We're going to zoom in, and we're going to set up multiple scans at the same time. So we're going to do a script scan, which is 10.106.10.43. Over here on this IP, or this tab, we're going to clear the window by typing in clear, and we're going to do an operating system scan as well. And to do that, hyphen, and then O. And then the last type of scan that we're going to be doing here is a version scan. So let's get all of these scans running at one time. So it's lowercase sv. And then let's go back to check on the other tab to see if we have some results. Now, this time around, on this IP address, which is on Metasploitable machine, we can see that there are lots and lots of open ports. For example, Telnet is open. We can use Telnet to remotely access the device. SMTP, which is mail, which means there is a mail server running. We can see HTTP is running, so it's a non-secure version of a browser. And 443 is not visible, which would be HTTPS. And we've got another bunch of stuff here as well, which is being displayed from our standard nmap scan. This is running on a virtual machine, so we can see that it does belong to VMware. Moving on to tab number 2 here. This scan was an operating system scan. We're able to identify that it is a Linux distribution, as well as identify MAC address like on the last scan, the number of hops that it took to get to the device, and again, the ports which are open. Over here, this is our script scan. So we can see it's 98% done, so we'll come back to it. And over here, this is our version scan. Let's see how far it is through. Again, it looks like it's almost finished. And script scan has finished first. And remember, the script scan, although it is using multiple scripts to scan the device at the same time, what the aim of this scan does is to identify if there are any weaknesses in the operating system. So first of all, FTP has come back. So this is a service which is running. Let's have a look to see if we can identify any weaknesses here. So over here in SMTP, which is mail, we're able to identify that this is in fact metasploitable. Over here in SSH, we are able to identify some host keys that we would be able to use to potentially remotely access the device. We can see that the SSL cert is using a common name, and let's continue scrolling down to find out if there's something a bit more interesting for us. And at the bottom here, underneath the host script results, we're able to identify the message signing is disabled, which is dangerous, but obviously, as we know, it's a vulnerable machine. This is set up by default to do this. Now, there's lots of useful information here we can use to be able to remotely access this device or to be able to deploy a payload against this device. And some of these other results we will explore in a little bit more detail as we get further into this session. Now, on the operating system scan, now it's finished, we can see that this is in fact metasploitable, and we can also see the versions of the different services which are running. And I can tell you for sure, VSF TPD is running 2.3.4, which is vulnerable. Okay, so now that we have done some reconnaissance on both local IP addresses and public IP addresses, we want to focus on the specific devices which are in our lab for this cybersecurity project. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a few commands. I'm going to explain what they are. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create a file which has some target IP addresses in it. So I'm going to do nano, and I'm going to do robips.txt. Now, we are focusing on 3 different devices here. One of them is Windows 7, one of them is Windows 10, and the other device that we're going to be focusing on today is Ubuntu, which is a version of Linux. Now, I'm going to list those IP addresses in here. So I'm going to write 10.106, 10.34. .34 is one of our Windows 7 devices. Remember, this IP address may change for you, but are multiple Windows 7 devices in the room. We're also going to type in 10.106, 10.39. This here is our Windows 10 device. Again, this IP address may change for you because there are multiple Windows 10 devices. And the last one for me is 10.106, 10.45. And this is our Ubuntu device. This is a Linux operating system. These are the 3 IPs that we're going to scan with CrackMap.exe. Ubuntu, we won't focus on too much with CrackMap.exe, but we will come back to using this IP address folder later. In order for you to exit this file here, you need to select on Control X, select on Y to save, and then press on Enter. In order to make sure that the information is in the file that we've just created in terminal, you can type in cat robips.ips.txt, and remember, your file name is probably going to change here as well. And this will allow you to display the contents of this file. Now, at the moment, we can see here it says there is no such file because Mr. Rob made a mistake. Rob IPs.txt, and these are the IP addresses listed. Now, next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that the Windows devices are actually up and running. So are they turned on? So we're going to type in ping 10.106.10.34. So is this device up and powered on? And the answer to that is no. So I'm going to go and switch on that device. Okay, so with these devices switched on, let's just ping it again and make sure it's responding. And there we'll be able to see that we can successfully send packets to and from this Windows device. Press Control-C to end this. Okay, so welcome back. What we are going to be doing in this next part is we are going to be having a look at brute force, and we're also going to be having a look at Hydra. Now, your teacher will be going through some of the theory aspects of this in class, such as what a word list is used for and how does brute force actually work. The tool which we are using for the practical element of this is called Hydra. And what we should be able to do is take a username or password, either from a word list or a single username and password, and see if this is the credentials for somebody's device. As I mentioned before, this will work both on local IP addresses as well as public IP addresses. Now, in Google Slides, you should be able to go to the brute force practical section. I am going to wait for this to load. I am going to get started with the tool here. And in order to get started, we are going to need to type in the command Hydra. Now, to really understand how this tool works and what the possibilities are with this tool, we can type in Hydra-help, and this will show you the different commands that you can use. So if you're wanting to do something beyond the scope of what we're exploring in this video, you can obviously have a look at the help menu. I'm going to type in Hydra, and I'm going to do lowercase l to begin with. This is going to allow us to try to see if we can find a match for a username and password. I'm going to use admin to begin with here. I'm going to do -p for password. I'm going to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next thing that I want to do here is focus on RDP. This is a protocol that we're going to be focusing on, and we're going to be trying to see if we can guess the correct credentials for our Windows 10 device. So that's 10.39. Now, as with other things that we've done in this video, remember your IP addresses are going to vary. There are many practical computers set up with Windows 10, Windows 7, and also Metasploitable in Ubuntu. So obviously do check the IP of the machine that you're using instead of just copying what's in this video. Now that I'm ready to make a start, if I press on Enter, we will be able to see if this is a valid username for the device which we have specified here on the IP address that you can see above. Now, you'll be able to see that we get a warning which says, please do not use in military or secret service organizations or for illegal purposes. So again, with that disclaimer, we're using this in a nice, safe setup for our cybersecurity project. Only use this tool if you have got consent. Now, the first time we ran this, we could see that this was actually failing because there was an issue with our command. We had the protocol in front of the IP address, so we received this error. You'll be able to see down here successfully, we've been able to conduct a brute force attack using Hydra, using a single username and also password, and it has been able to find these valid credentials. Okay, so next up here, we have looked at how we are able to conduct a brute force on a single username and password for a specific IP. But really what we want to be able to do is have a look at how we can use a larger word list in a brute force attack. Now, in order for us to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a word list which is called RockU. There are many different word lists we could download, but we're going to use the ones which are built into Kali Linux today. So you need to do a cd ... Let's clear our screen so we're in a fresh directory, and then let's press on ls. What we need to do is we need to log into this user file. So we're going to do cd user ls, and then we're going to log into cd share. Now, inside this folder, we will be able to see we have got something which is called word lists here. So if we go down, we've got this directory or this folder called word lists. Just so you can see that it's 100% visible on the screen, we're going to do clear and cd word lists again, and ls, and inside here we've got a file which is called rockutxt. Now, what we can do here is we can use this word list to actually conduct brute force on any number of IP addresses. Now, the problem with doing this is that this could take hours, if not days, to find a successful username and password. Just for the purposes of education, let's have a look at the types of usernames and passwords which are in here by using the cat command. So cat rocutxt is going to show lots of breached usernames or passwords. I would be interested to know if some of yours are here. To stop this from being printed out on screen, press Ctrl Z, press Enter, and then write clear again. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go to a new terminal window by pressing Ctrl Shift and T. And instead of using that ROCU word list, we're going to create our own here. Now I'm going to zoom in a tab for you just so it's visible. To create your own word list, you can use nano, and then you can give it a name. So I'm going to say Rob's user names txt. And I'm going to put in here Rob, Bob, admin, administrator, and also Michael. So we've got a list of some potential usernames for our device. Control X to exit, Y to save, and Enter to confirm. We're going to create a password list called Rob passwords txt. I'm going to put in here password 123, password capital P 123, 1234, 1234, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, we are doing this for purposes of education, so I'm putting in here a password which I know for one of these devices, and I put a username that I also know. To exit this screen, we do Control X, Y to save, and Enter to exit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use Hydra again, but we're going to focus on specific devices which are in our lab. So Windows 7, Windows 10, and also Ubuntu. I'm actually going to make a quick change to my username list by pressing up, and I'm going to also add in here user and user, just so I know that it has credentials for every single device. And then we're going to set up our Hydra command again. So we do Hydra -L this time, because we're going to be using a TXT file with multiple usernames. We're going to say Rob usernames TXT -P, because we're using a TXT file of multiple passwords. I'm going to say Rob password TXT, making sure that it's being spelled correctly. And I think also what we want to do here is we want to have a file which has got the 3 IP address names. So I'm pressing Control, Shift, and T to open up a new window again. I'm going to say nano rob IP address txt. And we're going to put in here the IP addresses for the different machines that we are focusing on. And just a reminder for you again, your IP addresses may differ from these, because maybe we are looking at different devices in our room that have got a different IP. So you might have 38, 37, 36. You would need to check the IP address on that computer, or you would need to conduct an nmap scan. Now that we've got this folder, Control X to enter, Y to save, Enter to exit. And over here, we're going to specify a file with our IP addresses. Now, I don't remember my full command for this, so I'm going to go to my notes. I would recommend that you keep notes as well. To specify a file of IPs, we do M. We do the name of the file, and mine is called Rob IP address. So we're going to type in Rob IP address txt. And the port, or let me rephrase that, protocol which we're focusing on again here is RDP. Now this time it's going to take multiple IP addresses, multiple usernames and passwords, and if I haven't made a mistake here, we're going to conduct a brute force attack using multiple usernames and passwords. Anything in green which you see, it means we've successfully been able to prove the username and password to our device or multiple devices here. And we can see 3 of 3 targets successfully completed, 1 valid password found, and it is for this Windows 10 address, because this is the only Windows device in this room currently that's turned on that has RDP active. Now, hopefully, these couple of videos on brute force using Hydra have been nice and clear. We're now going to move on to the next set of theory and also the next practical task. Okay, so welcome back to this session. We are going to be having a look at why automatic software updates are important, or why is it important to update your device to try to remove vulnerabilities which are discovered by cybersecurity researchers and hackers. So the next time you get an update on your iPhone or your Android device or your Windows computer, you should try to install these updates because it will protect you against cybersecurity threats as they kind of evolve on a daily basis. Now, our focus today is we are going to be looking at a Windows 7 computer. As we've already discovered, Windows 7 is end of life and it's generally a vulnerable machine. So we are going to be having a look at the Eternal Blue exploit and how somebody might exploit this device if it doesn't have the relevant security patches applied or software updates. And we'll also be having a look at how people would deploy payloads for Windows 10 and Windows 11 machines. Now, to get started, I'm going to open up my terminal window. I'm going to zoom in a tad so you can see what we're doing. And we are going to launch a tool which is called MSF Console. Now, this is called Metasploit. The name we're using to open it is MSF Console -Q. Means that we don't see the menu at the beginning, so there's lots of jumbled information that we don't need to know about. Inside Metasploit or MSF Console, we will have auxiliaries that will allow us to prove vulnerabilities. There will be exploits which we are able to use in order to get a reverse connection to the device, and also things such as post exploits which will allow us to elevate our user permission from standard user to administrator. Now, it does take a couple of minutes for the tool to load, so I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to zoom in again for you. And just so you can see the tools which are available in Metasploit, I'm going to open up the tool without the -Q here. Now, we are going to be focusing on Windows 7 and also Windows 10 here. Remember, the IP address that I'm using may be different to the one you're using because we've got multiple machines in the room. I'm just going to check that I can ping my devices. So 34 is Windows 7 and 39 should be Windows 10. And it looks like these connections are all active. Again, still waiting for our tool to load. We can see it's trying to load the Metasploit main menu here. Now, going back over to the slides while we do wait. So we've discussed why it is important to update your devices. Now, what can we find on this next slide whilst we wait for the tool to load? Why is it important to keep your devices up to date, and how could a hacker exploit these? So, as I've already said, if you are installing patches which are released by Microsoft, by Apple, by Samsung, this should mitigate any cybersecurity threats. Okay, so now our tool has loaded. I will show you the main menu of Metasploit in a couple of minutes so you can see the tools which are available, and it looks like we're actually ready to go here. So we can see that inside Metasploit, we have got around 2,400 exploits that we can deploy on devices for testing purposes, for educational purposes. Remember, we don't do things that are malicious. We've got a total of 1,468 payloads, and the auxiliaries are used in order to test the vulnerability of a machine. Now, in order for us to run an exploit on our Windows 7 machine, we are going to look at the Eternal Blue exploit. And actually, on slide 39, you're going to watch a video with your teacher on how this exploit was used against a bank a few years ago. But for now, we're going to select on Search Eternal. Now, this should load lots and lots of different exploits and auxiliaries. The one which we are going to use is 0. So we want to use the Eternal Blue exploit, which was designed to focus on protocol SMB, which is our server message block. We're going to type in use 0 which allows us to choose our option and enter. And then we need to set the IP address of our Windows 7 machine. Now, remember, the IP address that I'm using may be different to the one that you're using, so do check your IP addresses before you begin. I'm going to close these unnecessary tabs, just so we can save on memory here. And we're going to type in set rhost, which stands for remote hosts. Make sure it is plural with an S on the end. I'm going to type in 10.106.10.34. Now, before we run this exploit here, this is going to inject malicious code to the Windows 7 machine, and it's going to give us a reverse connection. So that means we will then be on the Windows 7 machine. Now, remember, you can only do this with the permission of somebody. If you're doing this without somebody's permission, this would be hacking, and of course, this would be absolutely illegal. Now, just in case this exploit does fail, if somebody has previously exploited a Windows 7 machine, you must restart it for the exploit to work again. So I'm going to type in exploit here. We're going to see if it does work. Remember, if it fails, we will restart the Windows 7 machine. So it's showing us that the device is vulnerable here. So it is vulnerable, and we can see that it is a Windows 7 Ultimate 7601 machine. Now it's injecting malicious payload. It looks like it's working right now, but we'll wait a couple of moments to see. And here we'll be able to see that we have got a meterpreter session. So in the meterpreter session, if I type in shell first of all, we will be able to see that we are now Windows. Remember, the operating system that you're using is Linux. Okay, so I am now Windows from my Linux machine. If we type in exit here, and if we type in help, this is going to give us lots and lots of different tools that we can run on the Windows machine. So for example, we can open up the webcam, we can open up the mic and listen to what people are talking about. We can get system, which will allow us to go from standard user to administrator, but I'm going to show you another way to do this later. And we can also steal the encrypted passwords and then use a tool such as John the Ripper or Hashcat to break the encryption. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in webcam stream, just so we can have a little bit of fun here. And you can explore these other tools in a nice classroom safe setting. But right now we can see that this did fail. So it should be webcam stream, and we can scroll up to double check for command. I did mistype it before. And let's see if this opens up the camera on the computer. And here you will be able to see my classroom. So that's some pretty scary stuff, okay? Let's have a look at the other tools that are available. Okay, so we have killed our webcam session. Now what we want to do here is, are we able to open mic, and just what are some of these other options? So we've got key scan dump, key scan start. So this would allow us to record the keystrokes that the user is pressing. We could change the interpreter session to be the current desktop. That sounds interesting. And we've got this other functionality in here as well. So we could shut down the device, and we could display the target system local date and time inside our interpreter session. Now, what I want to do here is I would like to see if we can go from standard user to administrator. So to do this, we type in get system. Now, I'm going to be showing you another way to do this a little bit later. Okay, and it says unknown command. Let's double check what I typed in. So get system looks like it's spelled correctly. It does look like this is failing because of a typo. And it says that we are already the administrator because the default account is admin. Let's just see if hashdump works. And here we have got all the encrypted passwords of each of these users. So later on in this video, we will be actually having a look at how we can take the hash, the encrypted password, and how we can break it. Now, for now, we are going to move on. Now we've looked at how to exploit this Windows 7 machine. And what I want to focus on is, are there any hidden files or maybe credentials on this device that we can use to access our Windows 10 machine? So if we type in dir, which stands for directory, we will be able to see all of the different files that are on this computer. I want to get into the C drive of this device. So I'm going to do cd dot, and then type in dir for directory. And then here we'll be able to log into each of the files. So I could log into program files and see if there's any files in here that contain personal information. dir to see the contents, cd dot to exit. But actually, what I want to do is go into the backup folder. So I'm going to do cd and backup, dir, and here we've got something which is called creds, txt. So in order to output the contents of this file, I can type in type creds txt, and it looks like there is an error due to a typo. So again, type creds is plural, and here we can discover some usernames and passwords which we could potentially use on our Windows 10 machine. Now, we're going to be focusing on a port which is called RDP, which I have previously spoken about, which is called Remote Desktop Protocol. If RDP is running on our Windows 10 device, we may be able to use these credentials to log into that device. So I'm going to type in here our desktop, the IP address of our Windows 10 machine. Do remember that your IP addresses may be different to mine. 10.39. Enter. And here we are now presented with the login screen for that device. If we go back over here, and what we'll be able to do is maybe take one of these usernames and passwords and log in as one of the users. So for this, I'm going to log in as Jerry. And the password for Jerry is here, 48 exclamation exclamation. Let's check the spelling of this, make sure it matches. The password we can see, and it says actually incorrect. Oh, that's interesting. So let's just double check again. So Jerry, 48, let's maybe try another one of these users. Let's go for Adam, and Adam, 66. And the and symbol twice. Now, I probably do want to check that this is the correct PC which I'm going to connect to. It does say it's wrong, which is frustrating. And what I'm actually going to do here is use one of my other Windows 10 devices in this case, right? So I will make sure 39 is configured. I'm going to actually try to use IP address 38. So let me just double check that that PC is turned on. Now, instead of us resolve the issues with our other Windows device, we're going to use that R desktop command again, and we'll come back to resolving the issues with the credentials a little later. So we're going to do 10.106, 10.39, and the credentials that we're going to use to log into this device are going to be admin, and then also 1 to 8 here. So we can Control A, admin, and let's see if we can use the credentials we have taken from the Windows 7 device. We are logged in to Windows 10 here. Now, a couple of things that we want to try to do on this Windows 10 device. Are we able to change any of the settings or the account settings to lock out a user? What information are we able to gather from this machine? This can be something which we kind of explore in a bit more detail in class. For now, we're going to be focusing on creating a payload for this Windows 10 device. We're going to close our RDP connection. Now that we've been able to see that we can successfully connect, and we are going to go over to our other terminal window here, type in clear, and we're going to have a look at how we can deploy a payload on a machine that is not actually vulnerable. Now, in order for us to do this, we are going to be using a tool which is called MSF PC. We are going to be focusing on Ethernet 0. So this is the way that it is connected to the network. It could either be wireless or it could be Ethernet. And then we're going to type in Windows here. Now, what this is going to do is create us a payload but we can then deploy to this Windows 10 machine. So we could do this through an email and ask a user to click a link, but as we're doing all of this for educational purposes here, we're actually going to deploy this using a Python server. So to get that Python server window ready, let's open up a new screen. Let's zoom in a little bit, and let's wait for our payload to be created. Okay, so now our payload has been created. What we want to do is we want to be able to transmit this to that Windows 10 machine. We have access, we know the credentials, so we'll be able to hopefully download the file. In order to send this, and as we're not focusing on social engineering or sending it through an email, we are going to use a Python server to do this. So if we type in Python 2 -m, we can create a server which will allow us to go over to the PC and then download that file. Before we start that server, what we want to also be able to do is label or rename the payload as something which is realistic. Currently, this would be the file path that we would be sending over to the Windows device. It doesn't look like it's something that we would want to download. So what we want to do is relabel this as something like Chrome EXE. We want to try to disguise it as a genuine program. In order to do this, we're going to type in MV, and what we're going to do is we are going to copy this command up here. We are not going to include the speech marks at this point. We are going to right click and we're going to copy. We're going to paste this down here, and I'm going to disguise my program as a Google Chrome installer. So I'm going to type in Chrome EXE. Now hopefully this will allow us to rename it from this very long name which you can see here, root Windows interpreter, and it will be relabeled as Chrome EXE. It looks like that this has worked. If I type in ls here, we should be able to see that this is now being relabeled to Chrome EXE, and we should be good to start our Python server. Now, our Windows 10 machine has got the firewall deactivated, we've got the antivirus turned off, so this file isn't flagged as suspicious. What we're now going to do is start this Python server, and we're going to type in the IP address of our Kali machine. And I'm going to type it out here so you can see. It would be http://10.106. And again, you're going to need to know the IP address of your machine here. So if config, and mine is 99, you must know this in order to transmit your payload. And the port that we are using here looks to be 8000. So up in our browser, we would type in colon and then 8000. I'm going to start another recording with OBS on the Windows device so you can see what this would look like when I actually try to download this file.
Okay, so over here on our Windows 10 device, we can see that we've located a Chrome EXE file after typing in the IP address at the top here. Now, in the first instance, when we try to download this is going to be blocked by the antivirus. So we are actually going to have to look at how we can disable the antivirus so we can download this payload. In order to do this, we're going to go on to Start. We're going to type in antivirus, virus and threat protection, and we're going to need to turn real-time protection off. So we're going to go into Manage Settings, turn off real-time protection, and we should then be able to re-download the file. Now, when we click on the three dots and click on Keep, we need to select on Press Keep Anyway. We then want to open up the file, click on More Info, but we do not want to run just right yet.
Okay, so now that we have transmitted our file, the next thing that we want to do is head over to this window again. And what we need to do is we need to set up a listener. And in order to do that, we are going to copy a command from the payload that was generated here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take everything from this run command and we're going to copy from MSF console all the way down to the end of exe.rc and the speech mark here. And this is going to set up a way for us to actually listen to see if the payload has been deployed. So we're going to paste this command down here. It's going to take a moment to execute. We're going to select on Enter. This is going to open up MSF console, and before we click Run on that device, we want to make sure that this listener or multi-handler is actually ready and running. Okay, so now our multi-handler is ready. What we'll be able to do is go back to that Windows computer, and we'll be able to run that Chrome exe file, and we should be able to again get a reverse connection and see how payloads are deployed.
Back on our Windows 10 machine, we can press run anyway, and it will deploy the payload.
Okay, so what you can see here is if we click the file on the Windows 10 computer, it's sending the payload to the Windows computer, it's injecting that malicious code, and what we'll hopefully be able to get here is a reverse connection to that device. Now, what we're going to do here, our focus is actually on elevating privileges and actually stealing the password hash for the different user accounts that are on that Windows 10 PC. And what we're actually looking for here are credentials for our Ubuntu machine, so we can go from Windows 7 to Windows 10, and then also Ubuntu. Now here we can see it's taken a little while to deploy. If we type in sessions and then 1 here, we'll then be able to see that we've got that particular session. And this is a key step for you. Sessions 1 means that we are then going to run the payload that has been deployed in order to get that particular session. Now, as I said, next we are going to be having a look to see if we can create or allow us to move from standard user to administrator. In order for us to do this, what I'll be able to do is type in get UID, and it's going to tell us who we are. We are Windows 10 and admin. In order for us to move to be a standard user to actually administrate the computer, we need to type in get system. But actually, this is going to fail here. We will not actually able to move to be a full administrator of a computer. So what we will do here is exit this session by typing in BG, which stands for background, and we're going to run a post exploit here in order for us to be able to go from a standard user to be a full administrator. We're going to type in search bypass UAC, and we're going to look for an option which says FOD helper, which allows us to go from standard user to full-on administrator. We're going to be using option number 19 for this. Always check in the description that we are using the FOD helper option for bypass user access control. So we're going to type in use 19. Once we have done this, we are then going to type in set session 1. And hopefully that is going to allow us to use this exploit to be able to elevate from standard user to full-on administrator. So the last thing to type is exploit. Now, we're back on this device with a intercept session again. We're going to type in get UID and then get administrator or get system. Let me mix up my words. So get UID, Windows 10 name. Last time we typed in get system, it failed. And hopefully, this time around, it hasn't failed like it did above. But you saw when we typed in get system here. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to try to steal the encrypted passwords using a tool which is called hashdump. In order for us to do this, we're going to type in again BG so we can background out of the session. We're going to type in search and hashdump. Hashdump is actually a tool which is built into the interpreter, but it doesn't always work. So we're going to use a post-exploit module, which we know that will definitely work for this task here. Now, in order for us to run this post-exploit, we're going to be looking for an option that says gather hashdump, and that looks like it is number 19. So we're looking for the option that says Windows gather hashdump. So we're going to type in use and then 19. Because we've already got a session open, which is session 1, this time around, we're going to type in set session 2, and then we're going to type in exploit. Now, we're going to be back on here with our third intercept session now, and we are going to try to take the credentials, which you can see here. So this is all of the encrypted passwords for each of the users. Now, the last thing for this section of the video here is that we are going to be using a tool which is called Hashcat to see if we can break this encrypted password. This is the user account, and then this is the password. In order for us to do this, we're going to type in Control, Shift, and T. Zoom in a bit on my screen. We're going to type in the command hashcat-a. The hyphen A tells Hashcat that we're going to be doing a dictionary attack. We're then going to type in 0-m1000. Now, for the 0, as I said, this is going to tell Hashcat that we are going to be doing a dictionary attack here. The A means attack mode, so let me kind of fix my wording from before. The hyphen M1000 is the type of module that we're going to be using to break this encrypted password. Now that we have done this, what we want to do is we want to go back over to that window and we want to store this information inside a new file. So we are going to do Control-Shift-T, create a new file which is called nano, and we're going to say Ubuntu password. We're going to paste in the hash which we have stolen, Control-X to exit, Y to save, and to confirm that we're exiting. And over here, we are going to type in the name of our file, which is called Ubuntu pass.txt. And then we are going to specify the word list that we are going to be using here. So it's going to be /user /share/wordlist/rocku.txt. And we're going to use that built-in word list from Kali Linux. When we're ready, we're going to press on Enter, making sure that there are no errors. And it's going to open up Hashcat as a tool, and we're now going to have a look to see if we can break the encrypted password. Now, at the moment, it does look like something is failing. Okay, so one of the problems we had a moment ago, which is why I paused and kind of came back, was inside our file, which is nano Ubuntu pass.txt, I only had a single user in here. And when we were trying to crack the hash of this password, it was failing. What I have done now is just copied over all of the user hashed passwords from this hash dump file. And it looks like our tool is actually starting to work. Now, what we'll be able to see over here is that I've run that same command again, hashcat-a 0-m1000 Ubuntu pass.txt, and then the folder of our word list here. Now, this is likely to take a little bit of time in order for this to actually work here. Now, let's have a look at the information which we are seeing right now. So we're able to see we're using this word list. Currently, at the moment, it's still trying to crack the password in this file. It said that the status is actually exhausted, which actually means that this has failed again here. So this hasn't been successful this time around by using the word list rocku.txt. Now, what we can actually try to do with Hashcat is create our own word list. From memory, we have previously created these with usernames. So if we press up again on our command, instead of using the user share word list txt, we're just going to type in usernames and then txt and see if we can crack the password hash like this. Now, if it is showing as exhausted, it means that we've not been able to find the password. And again, for some reason, we're getting this option again, which is exhausted. So in this scenario, I'm actually going to use a previous file that I created in order to demonstrate this. And hopefully when you get around to cracking passwords, this will actually work. So if this doesn't work this time, there is an issue with Hashcat today. I'm going to use a hash.txt file and usernames.txt, which contains a password. Press on Enter to crack the password. Again, if it's exhausted, we do have an issue with Hashcat. If it shows as successful, which it doesn't, unfortunately, we do have an issue with Hashcat. Now, I will kind of come back around to re-recording this video at a later point in the lesson so you can see how cracking the password actually does work. So hopefully this has been a good eye-opener for you to be able to see how password cracking does work with tools like Hashcat.
Okay, so in order to show the fix with Hashcat, I've actually waited to get around to it when I'm editing this video in order to be able to explain what the problem was. So, when we were looking at Hashcat previously, you'll be able to see all of my footage in here that I am currently editing. It kept saying that the tool had been exhausted and that it wasn't actually able to crack the encrypted password for the credentials that we'd stolen from our Windows machine. Now, this can happen sometimes if the word lists are too big. Now, what I've done over here, again, you can see I'm using iMovie to edit, very fancy. So I've changed it from being rockutxt to just be passwords.txt. And inside this passwords.txt folder, I've got around 20 passwords, one of which could be the password for the encrypted password, which is inside the hashstamp file. So I've got hashcat-a, 0-m-1000, and in here we've got the encrypted password for hashstamp.txt. I'm going to press on play here, and I'm still here. I'm just kind of pausing to see what happens here. So this time around, it's actually failing again, but we're being given a piece of information which we should be looking at within the tool. It says --show to display the encrypted password. And because it was exhausted before, because the word list was too big, we can actually use --show in this case to see if we're able to crack the encrypted password. So I'm going to press on play here, and I want you to focus on the command that I do use. And again, a very good lesson to you as an ethical hacker, computer scientist, a pen tester. Things are not always going to work out as you do expect. Now, hopefully we'll be able to see this. Okay, so --show doesn't work because we need to actually do it with the command with --show at the end. And instead of copying the whole hash here, we want to take admin, and then we don't want to take this encrypted junk at the beginning here. We want to take everything after the colon. This is going to be the actual encrypted password. So we're going to copy that from our hash_dump.txt file. And then now what you'll be able to see when we do --show is that we've got the part of the password which was encrypted in this file here. And then by using --show at the end, it's given us what that encrypted password was, which is 12345678. Now, as I said, I left this until kind of editing to kind of show a fix for this. It's good for you to know that things don't always work out as kind of pen testers and ethical hackers, or as computer scientists. Tools are not always as reliable as we want them to be. I hope that this has been a good lesson for you.
Okay, so welcome back again. We are going to be focusing on DOS and also DDoS attacks here. So we'll be talking you through the theory of how DOS and DDoS attacks work and the kind of disruption that these attacks cause. Now, something which we'll be doing in class is looking at something which is called slow Loris, and we're going to be focusing on both Ubuntu and also Windows 7 in this attack, but I won't be performing this in the video here. What we are going to focus on is using an auxiliary to see if one of our devices in the classroom has a vulnerability, and if we are able to exploit that vulnerability and launch a DDoS attack. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my terminal window. I'm going to write in clear. I'm going to resize it for you just so none of the recording is kind of cut off. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin by launching a Metasploit here. So remember, this sometimes does take a little bit of time. So msf console-q will avoid us from loading the main menu inside Metasploit. And the first thing that we're going to be looking at is the Windows 7 device. So is it vulnerable to a DOS attack? If yes, are we able to force it to go to the Windows blue screen? Now, remember here, our IP address is always going to be different. So here we've got 192.168.1.106, but for us, our IP is going to be different. So do change it to the relevant IP for the Windows device that you're focusing on in the classroom. Okay, so now Metasploit is loaded. I'm going to zoom in so it's nice and clear for you. And what we are going to start by doing here is we are going to have a look for that auxiliary. So we are going to search in here, search, and we're going to say MS12020. Now, this can be found on Google Slides. We've got prompts there which will help you find the relevant auxiliaries to be able to prove if your device is vulnerable to a DOS attack. Now, the first one which we are going to be focusing on is 0. So we want to check to see if the device could be vulnerable to a DOS attack. So we're going to type in use 0. And then once we've done that, we are going to type in set our host and then the IP address. So set our host, and our Windows IP is 10.106.10.34. And as I keep saying, do check your IP address of the device that you're focusing on. In this next part, we need to set the port. We're focusing on remote desktop protocol here. This is one of the protocols that we focused on in this video on cyber. So we're going to set our port, and it's 3389 for RDP. Once we are ready, we are going to type in exploit. Now, this is just going to check to see if it is vulnerable to a DOS attack. And we can see here in the white text that it says the target is vulnerable. Now, what we want to do is press on the up key. And we are going to search MS12020 again. And this time, we're still going to be using an auxiliary. But what's going to happen is that it's actually going to crash the Windows device and force it to go to blue screen. So this is just a reminder, this is why we apply relevant security patches once we get updates from a manufacturer. We're going to type in use 1. We're going to press up again. We're going to say set our host, set our port, and then we're going to type in here exploit. Now, I'm going to get my mobile phone ready so you are able to see what is actually happening when we do this. So I am going to zoom in on my mobile phone. I'll try to hold it with a steady hand, but it won't be that steady. I'm going to type in exploit, and I want you to focus on what happens to this Windows device. And here you can see the Windows device has gone to blue screen, and we successfully conducted a DOS attack. Okay, so welcome to the next part of this video. We are going to be focusing on Wardriving, wireless attacks, and packet sniffers here. We're not going to spend a huge amount of time on this topic, but I am going to introduce you to some key terms. So first of all, wireless attacks. So if somebody has a packet sniffer, similar to the Alpha AC600 adapter, which we are using in class, they can use this to de-authenticate people from a wireless network, which means kick them off a Wi-Fi network. They can create a fake Wi-Fi access point and trick users to connect to this to then steal their Wi-Fi credentials. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to use a tool which is called Airgeddon. And just remember, we're not spending too long on this topic. We are going to type in cd Airgeddon to begin with. In order to launch the tool, we're going to type in Airgeddon, and this is going to launch a graphical interface, and it's going to show if we have got the relevant library set up within Kali Linux in order to perform a wireless attack. So it's detected that we are running Kali Linux. It's going to check that we've got the essential tools installed. If they're not installed, it will prompt us to install them. And then we're going to take a quick look around the menu inside of this tool here. So we've got Ethernet 0, so that's going to be our hardwired connection, and then we have got WLAN 0. Now, you should also be seeing a WLAN 1, which I'm not at the moment, so I'm going to pause this and come back to it in just a second. Okay, so I am back again. In order to properly do this, what we're going to do is we're going to do a Control-Z to exit this tool. We're going to type in clear, and we're just going to make sure that our wireless adapter is actually visible. In order to do this, we're going to type in iwconfig, and this is going to show all of our interfaces which we can use to connect to the internet. We have got Ethernet 0, we've got WLAN 0, and we've got WLAN 1, and this is the adapter which we're going to be using here today. Now, notice something which we've got here, which is called mode managed. In order for us to actually sniff packets going from one device to another, or when a user is reconnecting to a network, this mode does have to be in managed mode, and we're going to use AirGadden as a tool to do this for us. I'm going to Control Shift and T to open up a new tab. We're going to come back to that window a little bit later. We'll log back into our AirGadden folder and type in AirGadden in order to launch this tool. Now, as I said a moment ago, we'll check that relevant libraries and tools are set up. When it is launched, it's detecting our operating system again as Kali Linux, and we're doing a tool check here. Now, this time around, when we continue, hopefully, AirGadden will be able to pick up our wireless adapter. Now we have got a WLAN 1, and we can see our Alpha AC600 adapter. We are going to type in number 3 here, and we're going to force our device to go from managed mode into monitor mode, so we're actually able to sniff packets or people which are reconnecting to a network. So to do this, we're going to type in option number 2, and it is going to change our interface. And then back in our previous window, if we type in iwconfig again, or just press on up, we can see that this is now in monitor mode, and we are ready to make a start. Now, what we're going to focus on here is the different options in here today. We could explore all of them, but unfortunately we don't have that much time. We are going to focus on an evil twin attack. Now, the role of this attack would be to kick a user off a network once we have discovered different Wi-Fi connections, and then once we've kicked them off, what we're going to do is try to capture the handshake when they reconnect to that access point. So we're going to type in number 7 here, and it's going to present us with these different options. We would conduct an evil twin attack with an access point with a captive portal, and what this would then do is create a fake SSID, which means like a Wi-Fi name, maybe similar to the one which they're connecting to, could be Starbucks Wi-Fi, and then we would try to trick the user into connecting to the fake access point, enter their credentials, and we would then use those credentials to log into their actual Wi-Fi network. Now, we're just exploring this tool. We're not going to perform this attack. What we are going to do is select on option number 9 here, and it says, do you want to continue, and do you want to use your WLAN 1 interface? We're going to select on yes, and what this is now going to do is it's going to look for targets within the vicinity to where I am located here. Now, we're focusing on the access point 2ER test, and as I said, we're not going to perform this attack. We're just looking how sniffing does work. Now, as soon as we see 2ER test, we're going to press on Control C, and that's going to close this black window here. Now, these wireless attacks can be complicated. Sometimes we do have dependencies or tools which are missing, so they are not always successful. The role of this is to just introduce you to wireless attacks, wardriving, and also a packet sniffer. Okay, so something which you're going to need in order to be able to complete practical lab at the end is to be able to remotely access a device. We have looked at how we can use our desktop, but we also need to have a look at how we can use SSH here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how that would work. I'm going to type in SSH, and what I'm going to do here is not press enter until the command is complete. I'm going to try to maybe connect to one of my Windows devices in the room. So I'm going to type in admin, and I'm going to say at 10.106.10, and I'm going to try port 39 here. Port 39 is our Windows 10 device. I don't know if SSH is enabled, so I guess we'll see how this unfolds when I press enter. And it says that the port connection has been refused because secure or SSH is not open on this device. Now, SSH stands for Secure Shell, and this allows us to remotely access an IP if the port is open. In order to complete this part of the video, in order to show you how SSH works, I'm going to get my Ubuntu device turned on, and then we'll see if we can remotely access it. Remember, you're going to have to put all of these pieces of the puzzle together in order to complete the practical task at the end. We're going to go for SSH again here, and I'm going to change this to IP address 45, which is the IP of my Ubuntu machine, and the username for this device is user. If I select on enter here, it's going to ask us for a password. I'm going to enter my password. And here we'll be able to see that we are now Ubuntu. Now, I'm going to move on to the final part of this cybersecurity project and the different skills which we've been demonstrating, and that is phishing. Okay, so it looks like we are back for our final topic, and we are going to be focusing on phishing, farming, and social engineering here. Now, with phishing and also social engineering, this is probably one of the biggest threats that we face in cybersecurity, because if an organization's system is secure, hackers typically need to look for a way into a system, and this is going to be by tricking an employee or tricking a person into clicking a malicious link, or maybe by launching a social engineering attack, which we'll kind of get onto a little bit later in this lesson, but that would be trying to trick them into either handing over credentials or sensitive information. Now, for the practical part of what we're going to be doing here, we are going to be having a look at a tool which is called Zfisher. Now, this is a free tool, this isn't a paid-for tool. I don't think that it works particularly well, but what it will allow us to do is generate a link for a user to click on with the aim to steal their credentials and to try to get them to think that they're logging into something like Gmail or Tinder or TikTok or any other service that you can kind of think of here. Okay, in order to get started with Zfisher, what we're going to do is we're going to download it by typing in git clone and then https://github.com/htr-tech/Zfisher. Now, hopefully by the time you come to do this, this will already be installed. So we're going to download this, and then we're going to log into that Zfisher directory. Now, remember that disclaimer that I've mentioned kind of throughout this video. What we're doing here is for the purpose of education, and you're very much protected inside this lab. If you were to use this tool outside, and send malicious links to people, there would be consequences for those actions. So, cd Zfisher, and then once we are logged in, to launch the tool, we're going to type in Zfisher, and then it's going to be .sh. This is going to check that we've got relevant dependencies installed here, and that the tool is up to date. And then once we are logged in, we are going to be looking for a service which is called Cloudflare, which should be option number 2, fingers crossed. Now that we're in here, we're going to be able to choose on which of these services we want to generate a fake link for. When the user does click on this link, they are going to be redirected to a login page for one of these services. I am going to be focusing on PayPal, as this is a service which many people use, so I'm going to choose option number 6, and we're going to be going with that Cloudflare option that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. When it asks if you want to use a custom port, you can select on enter, and hopefully it will use the default port for that. We can see it is now launching Cloudflare, and it says, do you want to mask your URL? I'm not going to mask it because I'm not looking to trick any users today, so I'm just going to press on no. And then here you'll be able to see a link has been generated. Now, if we go to this link in a web browser, it's going to take us to a page which looks like PayPal. This link does not look genuine. I think most users, if they hover over a link in an email and see something like this, they're going to say, this isn't PayPal. Typically, what hackers would do is they would use a service like Bitly to disguise the link. But again, this doesn't always trick users as well. I'm going to go back onto my Google Slides. I'm going to select in the 3 lines in the top right. I'm going to select on private window. I'm going to paste this link here. Now, this is a very short video on phishing and how these tools do work. I'm going to see if I am taken to a PayPal login screen, and what do you know, I have been. Now, we can see the victim IP has been identified here. Over here, if I enter, Rob is great, and my password, if I now press on login, and if we head back to this page, we will be able to see if we've been able to discover the user credentials there. So again, login, and it's saying view saving credentials. I'm going to change this to @gmail.com to see if we get any further here. And here, now we've entered a valid email, it's redirecting us to a real PayPal page. Now here, what you're going to be able to see in plain text is we've been able to discover the user email and also password. And again, with that disclaimer, right, what we're doing here, you're very much protected in this lab. We're looking at the ethics of these tools and why it's important to not use these tools to trick users. A tool like this is not really going to fool a user. It's a free tool. You can see the URLs which it creates are not very, very realistic, but hopefully this gives you an idea into phishing and how credentials are typically stolen from users. And a way to protect you from this is to use two-factor authentication. So if you've got it linked to an app on your phone or a YubiKey, and I would say SMS, but SMS isn't safe these days, if you've got a second stage where you enter a password and then you need to enter a unique code or tap on a button, this will, of course, protect your account. Now, this is pretty much all for today, so I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson, and thank you very much for bearing with me.